Our last installment explored the professional costumers in the greater context of the stage, cinema, and stadium, and in this week's episode of Fursuiting a History, we'll kick back for a little relaxation and celebration. We're going to learn how nerdy gatherings of science fiction and anime fans would evolve into the grand events thrown today, and how colorful, personalized creations became the mascots for an entire artistic movement born out of these growing fan communities. I'm your host, Arrkay, and this is Fursuit History Part 5, Cosplay and Masquerade. The most distant ancestor of the fursuit parade would be the masked balls of the 15th century Europe, which would often feature animal masks. Concealing guests' faces added an air of mystery and anonymity to the proceedings. Like the festivals and celebrations we talked about in Fursuit History Part 1, masquerades allowed people to make their own furry costumes and play a character, either original or an homage to an existing stories. These early aristocratic parties would be the means for the hosts and their friends to showcase their talents in elaborate pageants of music, costume, dance, and poetry to entertain those in attendance and to brag. These celebrations reached peak popularity in the West during the 18th and 19th centuries. They evolved into private costume parties, or fancy dress parties if you're fancy. In the 1880s, you could purchase a costume guide that would help you create costumes ranging from period Shakespeare clothes to abstract outfits such as autumn. These costume parties would quickly become a regular feature of a now familiar fall feast. Halloween, which already has a rich and fascinating history dipped in pagan ritual and Christian memory. Masquerades established a modern precedent for gatherings where animal costumes are a central feature, no matter their social class. We'll come back to this. A new party needs to be explored before these concepts collide. There are examples of what could be considered cosplay that predate these first fan conventions. These costumes were almost always handmade by very passionate and excited people, a feeling any modern cosplayer can relate to. We will be getting to fursuits soon, I promise, though you can absolutely find examples of animal-human crossovers in photographs from these early events. In 1939, not one but two small groups of middle-class workers would invite local science fiction authors in the earliest known fan conventions. These took place in New Jersey in the US and London in the UK, and would set the standard for generations moving forward on celebrating a common interest. Sci-Fi WorldCon would become the go-to destination the world over, inviting authors, artists, even scientific thinkers to talk at lectures, give workshops, and sign copies of their books. And of course, where fans go, so too does the desire to recreate your favorite heroes and villains. From the very first convention, there was cosplay. Very quickly, these conventions accommodated their costumed attendees. The first masquerade competition was 1940 WorldCon 2 and would become a staple of convention programming. Styled just like the old-time masquerades I've been talking about, costume contestants would walk across a stage or a cleared area on the dance floor. The masquerade would also feature live music, dancing, food, and drink, a scene not too far removed from a modern fursuit rave in concept, if not technology. These trends would continue even as the WorldCon eventually gave way to the smaller, locally based conventions, branching out far beyond the worlds of science fiction to include fantasy, horror, comic books, animation, and soon the first furry cons spun off from these, thanks in large part to the costumes. Cosplay gained more and more popularity into the 1980s, when a new Eastern influence was taking over: anime. The Japanese animation would become the new underground cool kid media to geek out over. Sci-Fi and COMICON visitors would share their bootlegged VHS tapes of Astro Boy and Sailor Moon. As anime gains more fans in the West, so too does its representation in costume, bringing in plenty of furry elements of its own, such as the Nekomimi or Catgirl outfits. This is where we first see con attendees wearing just ears and a tail as a more casual lead-up to the fully fledged fursuit. Animal ears and a tail are the ultimate in partial suiting. Cosplay itself is a Japanese term. Japan had the first anime convention as early as 1975, with character costumes becoming a regular feature. It wasn't long before cosplay became a key part of celebrations the world over. Coined in 1984, the word cosplay is a portmanteau of the words costume and play, obviously. It's a performance art in which participants, called cosplayers, wear costumes to represent a specific character. The term was coined by Nobuyuki Takahashi of Studio Hard while attending WorldCon 1984 in Los Angeles. He was impressed by the crowds of costumed fans and reported on the experience in the Japanese magazine My Anime. Takahashi coined the new word rather than use the English term masquerade, because masquerade translates as an aristocratic costume ball rather than a wild mishmash of fictional character costumes. The term cosplay also refers to the community of costumed role-playing in public, as opposed to on a stage. Fictional characters are the most common cosplays, though it's not unusual to see a cosplay actor of a different ethnic background or gender than the original character, or even some twist on a well-known character. This concept continues at furrycons today, with both canon versions and variations of famous characters appearing in fursuit form. All fans love to incorporate themselves into their fan works. They created their own Mary Sue characters to serve on the Enterprise or fight a battle alongside the elves of Mirkwood. Anime especially was prone to these original characters, and this influenced furry heavily, paving the way for even more outrageous, colorful characters. And it's not just anime, I'm also including manga. People in the comments. Furries began to enter the fandom scene in the late 70s. At first, as a collective of design printers, artists, writers, and they were eventually big enough to host their own furry parties. It's worth pointing out that faux fur wasn't widely available until the 1950s and 60s, still considered an expensive luxury. Faux fur wasn't available in as many varieties as we have today either, so we see a lot of aliens, lizards, insects, and instead of fur, you might also see a lot of velour, velvet, and a fair amount of makeup prosthetics. You may have seen this lacy vixen as well. This is Hilda the Bambioid, one of the first heavily photographed fursuiters and certainly a major head-turner at the first furry conventions in California in 1989 and 1990. As the 1990s saw the fandom grow with new events, we see the fursuit style starting to take hold. There was a lot of experimentation in these early days. Everything from leather and lace to prosthetic makeup and bulky mascot performers. Looking through catalogs of old convention photography, you can practically map the evolution of fursuit design. Panels at conventions share the crafting skills and wisdom on how to make fursuits, and it's easy to see which design elements really took hold and which elements that are better left off in the 90s. The furry fandom now had a dilemma to address, as more furs were coming in with their newly created characters, as the fursona itself became a staple of furry identity. Just how can the furry convention host something like a masquerade? Dealers in the den weren't willing to close their booths to attend, so how could they find a way for every costume to get the admiration that they deserved? The solution? The Fursuit Parade. All the costumes gather for a group photo and march around the convention space, the dealer's room, and the hotel to make sure that every dog has its day. This became the standard for every furrycon throughout the 90s and 2000s until the Fursuit Menagerie, an experiment brought to us by Midwest Fur Fest that harkens back to the original masquerade party of centuries past. A mingling, playful mashup of a party, performance, photos, and fun. Variants can be found at other large cons like the Fursuit Fiesta at Fernal Equinox. The one thing that stays the same is the group photo. Most, if not all, fursuits of the convention gather for a sometimes massive portrait of suitors. ANTHROCON 2018 had almost 2 1,000 unique fursuiters. You practically need an airplane hangar to fit all that fuzz to take a photograph. We've now come full circle. Today we learned all about the early masquerade parties and the elaborate costumes just waiting for more exposure. As fan conventions introduced year-round celebratory dressing up as canonical characters, more and more celebrated their favorite media by dressing the part. The masquerade contest transformed to a parade for all, and now seems to have brought us back to something more closely resembling the original masquerade ball, for which the costume and skit contests were named. On the next installment of Fursuiting a History, we will look at how fursuits are constructed, what they're made of, and what it takes to perform in suit. All this and more in Fursuit a History Part 6, The Anatomy of the Fursuit. I have been your host, Arrkay. Thank you for joining us. You can join in the furry masquerade yourself by subscribing to the channel here on YouTube and pledging to our Patreon at patreon.com/culturallyeft.
Hi, I'm Rusty Shackleford, and I'm here from the future to warn you that the fursuits are taking over, and the only way to stop them, or at least slow them down, is to subscribe to Culturally F, and make sure all of your friends are subscribed too. What also helps is if you get Culturally F merchandise at culturallyf.com. That certainly throws them off their game. Incoming transmission! Make sure to subscribe to Culturally F on Patreon, and then maybe you can be impregnated with the future's last hope. I have been Rusty Shackleford. Good luck. Oh, wait, I'm back. And remember, don't put pineapple on pizza. That's also gonna make the apocalypse come faster. Goodbye.